On this episode of Pet Business Disruptors, we have Ben Penrose, former general manager and head of buying at fetch.co.uk. Ben also has experience as national account manager for Hills and really is going to lay down how we can demystify the buying process amongst corporate buyers. Let's get into this. Welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I'm Clayton and I'm here today with Ben Penrose, a man with a wealth of experience in the industry. And most importantly, in my opinion, the reason I really wanted to get Ben on, he's very experienced in supply side and buying.
Thanks for having me, Clayton. Nice to be here.
Yeah, no, awesome, man. So, Ben, do you want to just give us a rundown on you, just on your history and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, sure. I guess talking pet specifically, I've had two semi-careers within my larger career in food and beverage. First part of my career in pet, I worked for Hills Pet Nutrition, which was a specialist pet food manufacturer in dog and cat. I spent 5 years there in different roles, including commercial. And then second half of my career, I came back into the pet industry, leading initially the head of buying as fetch.co.uk, which was part of Ocado's business. Then we took over the wider buying function on Ocado as well. And then eventually I ended up as the general manager for fetch.co.uk before we sold it. Had the pleasure of running that business during COVID. So interesting times. Yeah,
I bet it went crazy during COVID, right?
It was crazy times. Yeah. Certainly lots of stories to tell from that time.
So. But it's funny because I suppose nobody really saw COVID coming, and the explosion in online sales during that period. I remember I had a customer who was a big Amazon seller, and he went from ordering 500 quid's worth a week to suddenly he was buying like 3-4 grand a day. Overnight, it just went mad, absolutely mad. So I guess Fetch were well positioned for that.
I mean, I joined Fetch after 5 years, and I kind of, my first experience of Fetch was actually based in the first part of my career as a supplier into the business. And but sort of coming back into Fetch, I joined it as a £50 million turnover business, and we were growing at sort of 22% per annum pre-COVID. You imagine at Ocado, suddenly, Boris is at the, doing his thing, space, face, and all of the rest. And literally in 15 minutes, there was 1 million customers trying to get onto the Ocado website. Pretty crazy times. Suddenly you get a phone call from the CEO, managing directors going, we're going to have to start thinking about exactly what we do and how we do this, because the operating model that Fetch had included Ocado. So if West London are going to stop getting their fizzy water and their San Pellegrino, then they want to be damn sure that they're putting the right products out there to their customers. So very interesting times.
No, it was insanity. It feels like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? Almost, to be honest. It's
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, retail is pretty hard work, and certainly coming from supplying to retail, the initial instance, getting used to that was a real challenge, but quite an interesting time, stood in your back garden on the phone to a supplier, and the supplier saying, well, we can't do any business right now. I'm furloughed and I've been watching 10 episodes of Netflix, and I'm thinking
Tiger King.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, Jesus, I started at 4:30 this morning and didn't finish till 11 o'clock last night. So it was pretty challenging times, but hey, glad to have a job at the time, and there certainly wasn't a day where you didn't have work to do.
So I mean, one of my main things obviously is I want to try and demystify as much as we can about the industry, and I think there's a huge amount of almost mystique around dealing directly with big corporates and how people should go about it, because I get asked this a lot. Like what to expect, what they should be preparing. And I think look, I give advice on it, but I've never been a buyer for a corporate. I know what works for me.
Yeah.
And look, sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't, so it's, but what I'd really like is just for you to give me the laydown, like, so when you were head buyer for Fetch, I mean, that's a massive account for a pet company to get. What was it? What was your criteria? How did people get in touch with you? What would they expect during the process?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to come at it a couple of angles, and I'm a great believer in demystifying it. The reason that I sort of start with one angle is because previous to being a buyer, I was an account manager. My first national account management role was selling into Pets at Home. And this was when Pets at Home had just sort of reached 400 stores, clearly not the size they are today, but nonetheless, you know, they had a big, shiny head office and they had buyers coming in from Tesco and Asda and stuff. So, you know, actually I sat on both sides of the table. And I mean, Pets at Home were pretty good, but when I was working for another company coming into Tesco, sometimes I'd walk away. I didn't have a clue what the buyer wanted. Like, I'm not sure I got my message away. I'm not sure what we agreed. And by the end of it, I was like, crikey, I'm not entirely sure that what they want now is the same as before. And that obviously plays a load on your ego. So if you're selling and you've been in that position, or people watching the podcast are, you know, I'd take a situation where, you know, I've put a proposal together. The buyer thinks it's shit. I take the information back. My manager and his boss think, well, that's a load of rubbish. And then I go home having put all this effort in and been away for a couple of days. And my wife says, well, you're shit. You haven't been looking after the kids for the last few days. So you can imagine sort of how, you know, that starts playing on your ego and how everything gets more and more important. And buyers will play into that. You know, I had an example, again, national terms with Pets at Home. We'll have you in a meeting at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. Now, Manchester, Cheshire is where their head office is. I'm living in Hertfordshire. Nobody wants to be on the roads at 6 p.m. on a Friday evening, particularly between Manchester and London. And I've travelled up to Manchester. I get there. I'm in the hotel nearby grabbing a coffee before I head in. 4 o'clock. I'm sorry, the buyer's been off sick today. Can you come back Monday? Now, you could have told me that at 9 a.m. in the morning when you knew they were off sick, or, you know, it's just a tactic and, you know, gritted teeth. That's okay. What time would you like me back Monday morning? Can you make it 9 o'clock? 9 a.m., obviously, not 9 p.m. So, you know, travel back 3.5, 4 hours back to home, and then 4 a.m. start on Monday morning to be there fresh, ready to go. You know, you cannot let the buyer control the situation in that situation. And we were talking good money then. You know, we were talking multi-million pounds worth of sales. So these are tactics that buyers will employ. And clearly, you know, the whole purpose of the buyer versus the account manager or the commercial representative, what we mustn't forget, first protection is what is your margin and what's your cash. And it's your jobs. And basically, I would describe myself as a national account manager as basically I'm a stab vest. So I'm the one who has to take all the horrible abuse in some instances, not necessarily Pets at Home, but other retailers that I've worked with, and basically just absorb that shock so that at the end of the day, we walk away with, as a supplier, the best position that we possibly can. And of course, sometimes I have to go in and deliver bad news. And again, a buyer is trained, literally, the professional flinch, you know, oh my God, you know, fall off the chair. Oh God, you know, feeling desperately unhappy about it, or even getting up and leaving the room. You know, we've all employed those tactics at some point in time. Oh. And so you know, that's the commercial sort of antagonism that's going on. Build on your question, then the second facet is, well, how did that inform me as a buyer? Well, the first thing I learned as a buyer was buyers are so busy. By being that external facet to their organization, you know, you've got to deal with a supplier. And if you imagine, and you're listening now or watching now, you've got so many stakeholders that you deal with in your business or your life. Well, as a buyer, let's say I'm the dog food buyer at Pets at Home or Jolly's or somewhere else like that. I might be dealing with 15, 20 brands, perhaps. Yeah. Pets at home, probably 30, maybe 40. I have to have a relationship and a contact point with every one of those companies. And so actually, if you imagine that in your own organization, like that's a lot of work before you've even started dealing with people in your own organization. And so, ego plays a massive part as a commercial person, because I want to be heard. I want to be seen. I want the buyer to know me. I want the buyer to love. Well, maybe.
Maybe not love, but like me a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you're sitting there and then you get into the buyer's shoes and you're like, oh my God, like I've been away from my desk all morning in meetings and there's like 2 pages of unread emails that I've now got to try and find the danger points in here before I get round to it. So, when you're coming in cold on a potential customer, you're doing your business development, and love to have heard your stories in other podcasts about how you do that business development. But in that situation, like you think, oh my God, they've not responded to me. I'm not important. They don't care. Well, actually, it might be just that you came in the inbox and you went out the inbox, and there's only a couple of times a week that they can go through it properly. So, I
mean, to be honest, that's why I always found the best way to contact buyers was at shows, to have a stand.
Yeah.
Just because actually cold reaching out to them, I've always found a total waste of time, to be honest, because I've reached out to companies before and they don't even read the emails half the time. I put a mail track on them. They don't even open it, to be honest. So it's like when I dealt with, or like Chewy, for example, in America.
Yeah, massive.
Met them at Super Zoo, met Petco at Super Zoo, and Tractor Supply, who are the other big corporate I dealt with in America. I got in touch with them through RangeMe.
Okay, yeah, RangeMe is very good. I see more and more of that, particularly in retail.
Yeah, and so, but if I was just pinging out emails, no one takes any notice of you, to be honest. But I mean, for me as well, like, I was also aware in the American setting of the clawbacks they all ask for.
Yeah, it's big money.
And it's big money. And like, if you think, because I always say to people when they, like, so I know different people who go, I'm going to go to America, and I say, whatever you do not offer them your best price. Do not offer them your best price.
Yeah.
Give them a price that makes sense, because they're going to take the best price, whether you like it or not. And they're just going to give you a clawback level that they want. And that can vary. It can go 20% or it can be 25%. It really depends on, I think, what side of the bed they get out of, to be honest. Or I think how much they think they can squeeze you compared to how much they want your product,
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's interesting. I've done this on both sides. You sometimes you have time, but you're time bound. There's an opportunity, available. And so you're trying to work on the fly with it. And that's where you'll kind of, if you and I are in a situation and you come in and say, hey, look, I've got 10 ton of X. I can give it to you at this price. We're in a trading relationship. I barely know you. I'm going to push you quite hard at the beginning because I want to win the majority of that margin to be had. And so, if you're coming in, you almost need to have an idea of, we would call it in training, negotiation zone. So the negotiation zone is between, let's say, £5 and £7 a ton. Obviously, I'm just making numbers up here, but five to seven, I can make money. If it goes below 5, I'm losing. And if I can get it north of 7, then that's great. And if you and I are having that and it's just a one-off trade, then you'll start at 10 and I'll start at 0, and I'll hope to meet you at 5, but you don't want me to meet at 5 because you're kind of borderline. You've just got rid of your problem. Yeah. And so, we call those the anchor points, and really important that you've equipped people to go in and be able to do that and answer those questions. Can I trade in that space? Yeah. A lot of people don't do that, and that's where buyers win every time.
Yeah, because look, yourself is that, let's say, because what was the manufacturer make on a product? Maybe 25-30% when they're selling it B2B, and if they walk in with that attitude in mind when they're talking to Chewy, before they know it, they're giving the stuff away just to be be on their platform, you know?
Yeah. And look, I could talk for organisations of all sizes, but I've been into, I won't name them because it's probably quite embarrassing, but I've gone into a large manufacturing facility, walked the floor as a guest of the multinational supplier at Fetch, and walked past the machine. And, again, you're trying to encourage this conditioning element. So that looks like a new palletizer. Hey, how much did that cost? Oh, we paid 1.8 million for that. Okay, so my share of the 1.8 million is X. I walk up to this bagging machine and it goes, every bag that gets damaged on this route costs the company £10. And I'm like, to my account manager, well, that's interesting. She's like, well, that's just not really true. And I'm just like, okay, £10. That's what it costs them to produce those goods. They're making this margin, and just immediately, I feel like a real arsehole because I'm making everybody feel uncomfortable, but it's my job to do that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's business at the end of the day. You're not all like best mates, It's the harsh reality of you've got to make the company money, and they want the stuff in with you because you're selling a lot of stuff. So it works on both levels, and it is just a negotiation at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'll build on that point for you. Like at Hills, Ocado, and coming back to sort of the origin of the story of Fetch, I think it was 2009, the first time Ocado had come to Hills, and it wasn't just us. There was Royal Canin, it was ProPlan, etc. But Ocado were doing something called a nil search. So tell me all of the searches that have happened this week that haven't turned up in people's baskets. And Hills kept coming up time and time and time again. And they were like, hey, this is like, our customers want this, At that time, a lot of Ocado's customers were affluent, upper and middle class, and they were buying good, expensive pet food, And so they're coming in and go, well, we can buy this from you, can't we? And at Hills, at Royal Canin, at all of those guys, you had a distribution policy that effectively prevented you from selling in grocers. It was designed to sustain pet specialist and vet. You had to be allowed to take your pet into store. Well, that's all right. Somebody sat at their computer. Their pet can be wherever they like. Not quite getting it. You need to have a suitably qualified person. It allows you to be, the pet store. Well, we can employ those people. And at Hills, we probably had 25 different elements to doing that. And Ocado come back. Well, we can do 12 of the 25. I'm sorry, until you can do all 25. And that was it. It took them four years of iterations. Well, actually, we'll build Fetch and we'll build it as a site on Ocado's. No, sorry, you can't do that. It has to be a standalone site, all of these things. So when I left Hills as the account controller for .com, Fetch was a £300,000 business, and they said, we'll be 30 million in 3 years. And I laughed. I just left and went, yeah, whatever, And like I say, 5 years later, coming back as the head of buying, and they're 50 million. And I'm like, oh, crikey. Okay. Well, they're clearly doing something right. So, yeah.
I mean, because the interesting thing about Fetch is they actually do have a lot of the, let's say, more pet specific brands which you can buy through the likes of Ocado. I remember like brands like Carney Love, for example.
Yes. Yeah.
Were on there, So actual real pet industry brands which you can actually buy through the platform.
And that was those distribution policies. Once you've fulfilled one, you've pretty much nailed them all. So I mean, look, then you're getting into that space of, well, hey, we're a £50 million business, and back to your original sort of point of view of us talking is, well, then how do you come in? How do you talk to the buyers? And Itch, we had Fetch, not Itch. Apologies, you might want to cut that one. Fetch, we had about 7,500 lines, and we were probably doing 80% of that through pet food. So, there was that, we would call it the Holy Trinity in .com. Well, I say but .com was, if you could hit three factors, the first one being price, second one being selection, and third one being convenience, that's what works.
Yeah.
And you talk of Amazon and people selling through there. Amazon's exactly that. You're kind of reassured that you're getting a good price. You can see the prices. I mean, look at the site, the joke, where do you bury a dead body on the second page of Amazon? That gives you a feel to the size of the choice there. And then the convenience is, can you deliver it? Well, at Fetch, we would deliver on Ocado vans for 50% of what we did. So we could give you an hour slot. I mean, imagine that up against Yodel. We'll chuck it over your fence at some point during the day, sort of thing. So these were all trade-offs that we could then provide to those suppliers. Because look, if somebody buys, we'll use Carnilove as the example. Where do Carnilove sell? They sell in garden centres and they sell in pet shops. Well, you have to go to the pet shop to get it. And once you've got your recommendation, you kind of made up your mind. If you're happy with the food and your animal's loving it, then you leave it. So the next bit you're looking for is choice, cost and convenience, which we could offer. So, that's how we as buyers would play it with suppliers, which is, well, look, we're giving you everything that your customer needs. And these are your customers. They're not our customers. They're yours. So you need to invest into them. And then we start saying, and by investing into them, that means we need you to buy banners and we need you to, do promotions with us. And ideally, we want the promotions that you're not giving to anybody else, because we've got a loving relationship now, haven't we, Clayton? So, and I like you, and I like you even more when you can spend some money with me as well. So,
no, it's interesting. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that because I think a lot of suppliers get a little bit blindsided by this, especially if they're not used to this sort of corporate world. I think there's a lot of, let's say, smaller brands who, if you've only ever dealt with independent retail before and maybe wholesalers, I think once they get into a deal with a corporate, they're not used to clawbacks, marketing budgets, product specific offers, that sort of stuff. And I think a lot of them just ain't prepared, quite honestly.
Yeah, and look, in the work that I do now, I actually work with smaller businesses to build out and create those facets. A lot of people, as they're starting out or growing their business, well, actually, they'll go into those negotiations. They'll find out some of those extra bits, and they'll feel obliged to give them. So, clawbacks, overriders. We grow your business by 50%, you give us additional money, for example, all legally sound and sensible, because it allows me as the retailer to invest into your business. But, a lot of people then go, well, that doesn't quite stack up, but I'll do it for the first year. And a lot of companies I work with 2 or 3 years in, they're doing nice turnover, but they're not making any money because they're giving it back to the retailers because of the commitments that they've made. So, that's definitely one of the challenges. Like you say, when you walk into a good buying team, they'll have 5 or 6 different areas that they know, well, if that works, I'll get that and that. If that doesn't work, I won't get that, but I'll get that and that. And if that and that don't work, then I'm sort of reliant on this one coming in. So, yeah.
So what, when you were buying for Fetch, what was your criteria when you, let's say I'm a pet brand and I've got something which you find mildly interesting, you think it might be good, what would be your criteria for buying? And also in terms of, would you approach people at shows, or would you, how was your normal sort of funnel?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to be mildly controversial here, but hey, we're on Pet Business Disruptors, right? So we always used to have a bit of a joke. Every Pats, we'd roll along to the Cannigan stand and see how long we were allowed to stay on the stand before we were told to, get off. Because obviously they support the independent pet trade. And, we would then second day come back and go, look, I know you don't want us on the stand, but should we talk about what we can offer you? And again, be politely removed. So, Canagan were brilliant for that. You know, they were firmly behind the pet trade, and that is what they were doing. It wasn't corporates or .com at all, and I applaud them for that. Yeah. But I used to love winding them up. We explored a couple of others, particularly around raw. At the time, you know, raw was. I mean, Pets at Home had freezers, but it wasn't being done in the same way that it was in independents. And so we actually ended up engineering a dropship program with some of the frozen suppliers so that their customers could order through us and then they would deliver it on our behalf. So that came out of a conversation where we needed to fulfill and grow our business. I think when you're walking the trade shows, whether that's Interzoo, whether that's, you know, Pat's or it's another in Europe, accessories is always quite an interesting space. You know, I'm not sure it's faddish, but beyond like the core guys, you know, you seem to find somebody comes into fashion. Camouflage probably was 2019, 2020. And then, you know, love toys. Toys is brilliant. Of course, the most challenging thing about being in pet food is you can't really taste and enjoy I mean, some people do, but
they do it, yeah.
Yeah. So how engaged can you be? So design, novelty, and all of that sort of stuff really plays in as well.
Yeah, I think that I always say to dog food brands and pet food brands, it's all about outlining functional USPs, and that's what wins. I think really is if you can say, look, our dog does X, Y, and Z. So, for example, the insect dog food thing at the moment is like they're all going with sustainable and hypoallergenic. And I'm always like, no, we need to talk about how full of medium chain fatty acids, which is great for immune system. It's great for teeth. You know, there's like work on the stuff that actually sells the product because no one's eating it. Like, I mean, your dog will either eat it or it won't. I mean, that's a whole different thing. And your dog will either thrive on it or it won't. And a lot of that's down to genetics and stuff we can't control. But what you can do is work on the actual USPs. And I think you see it a lot with dog foods. I think they forget that if people are changing dog foods, they're changing for a certain reason. And they're changing because your dog has an issue. You know, it could be skin and coat. It could be joints. It could be like bowel. It could be loose toilets. It could be anything. And that's what you really need to funnel into to really win the work. And then you've got to then put that over to the buyer. And I think my thing always when approaching buyers was really have my USPs nailed down, be able to scientifically go through them. Like have them blasted on the packaging so it's very obvious what each product does. Don't overdo it because what you don't want is a product which has 50 USPs because it just becomes a nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like just really kind of like hit them with different functionalities and show how you stand apart from the people who are currently there, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like ironically coming from Hills, you know, I had certain beliefs and understanding of products and, you know, like you say, life stage, change of circumstance. But one of the greatest examples I see of that is Royal Canin, where they went with their breed lines.
100%.
You know, we all talk as pet specialists and experts, and we're like, well, there's not really a great deal of difference between a Labrador and another large dog in terms of calories, in terms of nutritional requirements. But the way they was like, you know, it was all the learnings they'd taken from consumer in their other businesses and brought in, you know, the kibble shape for the palate of the mouth. You know, you sell that to a buyer and the buyer goes, I can understand that. Mm-hmm. And the consumer is telling me that they understand that. And I just, mega product.
I mean, that breed specific stuff was probably one of the greatest food.
Well, it's what Tails kind of developed, and then we'll because we're online and we can customize it for you. How much do they customize it?
No.
You know, again, cynic says maybe not so much, but hey, we'll put the name on the pack. I mean, that's the next natural. Johnny the Labrador, you know, Danny the Dachshund, you know, those suddenly, you know, again, you're just tugging on those pet parent heartstrings, and for buyers, that's really interesting.
But it's also, I think the problem is like when people go into pet stores is that your average person is relatively low information. I wouldn't say like everyone, but your average person is relatively low.
Well, that's why they're going into a pet store, isn't it? Yeah.
And so they look at the shelf and you've got a bag which is Royal Canin Dachshund, and you've got a Dachshund, you're thinking, that's got to be the right one, right? It's Do you know what I mean? It's like, why would I buy any of these other things? When I've got a Dachshund?
I don't have to guess it.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that's, I think, a lot of what it is that, that's why you have to be hyper clear on USPs, because you need to actually like position your product as a solution for somebody who walks in and goes, well, I've got a problem with my dog's got itchy skin, suffers with allergies, and you can go, novel protein, relieves itchy skin, and then you've sold the product, because that's the natural way people do it, rather than just saying 60% meat, because that doesn't really mean anything.
No. Well, again, like I think for most people with a low level of education on it, I mean, 60% meat, we're throwing up the fact that there's only 60% meat in our nuggets or something like that. And yet I'm kind of prepared to let my dog have if you're buying a very low grade, then actually it's a lot lower than that. But most people don't know that.
No. And like most people would look at that and go, well, what is a normal amount? Like, they're not looking at a bag of Dr. John's, which might have, let's say, I don't know, 10% or something, because they're not looking that deeply into it. They're just looking at, is this product, does this do what it says on the tin, and what's the price of it? And I mean, it was like the IAMS thing when IAMS went into supermarkets, and it just bombed because it was a tenner a bag next to a bag of Whiskers, which was £3 a bag, but then no one was there explaining the difference.
Exactly.
And so it's like, it was a disastrous thing for them to do that, because they alienated the whole pet trade. And then spent the next 10 years trying to recover their position. So in terms of like funnels, like would it be like trade shows generally you'd find companies, or?
Well, again, like there were 6 in our team, so effectively we built the team around the fact that the most senior buyer dealt with the biggest corporate relationships. So, when you're talking with a Mars, with a Nestle, etc., we're looking for media funding, we're looking for overriders, we're looking for promotional support. We have a joint business plan for that, and a 16-page document describing all of that. So, that's where the senior buying element is. Then effectively in your more junior buying roles, you're giving them the freedom to sniff it out. So, that might be, we would work with Pedigree, for example, who would come in and say, right, obviously they've got their own brands, Chuck It, stuff like that. But we've had, Earth Rated was one brand during our time that sort of come in, and they were like, well, Earth Rated are here to come and invest in the UK. We can, do these prices for you. It will come with this support. So that would be like, well, we'll give that a go. That's a couple of totes in the warehouse. It's, it's not a significant problem. And we know we can get it next day from Pedigree if we need some more. And then, whether that's, you then get inbound traffic on the email, on the contact us and stuff like that. So again, we would, bring people in, trying to find that balance between, well, where do you do the work? And as I said, early doors, there's a lot of work that the buyers are doing, but where do you uncover the next new thing? And, again, some of the work that I do in terms of business development is how do you frame up the opportunity? And, this is kind of one of my passion points in terms of a buyer is how many times have I sat in a meeting and had a presentation from somebody, and the first slide is, well, this is who we are. This is why we exist. Number 2, this is where we produce. This is our quality assurance. And by 7 pages in, I still haven't seen the product. I still don't know why the major motivator is for the consumer. I don't know what the price is. I don't know what profit opportunity is there. And my first round of training in commercial, it was literally you leave the pricing and everything until the very end. You keep the buyer guessing. But of course, as a buyer, I'm sitting there going, I've got 15 minutes left. Let's have a proper conversation here. Yeah. And so now actually I say to people, start with your price up front. A bit like you've said in previous podcasts, analyze the room, make sure you've done your research, and then walk in there and you say, look, so, I work with somebody and we're looking at a total market opportunity right now of £20 million, right? That's £20 million opportunity in the trade. You as a retailer are worth 5% of that total trade, or to a store, this is X. I can walk in and I can tell you how much that is. Now, if that number is not of interest to you at the beginning, let's not waste our time, right? It's only my ego that gets hurt, and it's getting hurt anyway. So, let's start. And if you've given the consideration about, well, how much room have you got for the clawbacks, for everything else, then inevitably you've gone in with a price and an opportunity that the buyer is going to be interested in the opportunity, but they're probably going to make a point around the price. And that's okay, because I've already got a few pennies in the back pocket to, start initiating the conversation. So.
Yeah. And like, it was always my tactics. And like, I did it with every corporate I did. I'd lead with the USPs, but then immediately go in with the price and the profitability. I think maybe it's because I've been on the other end where companies have come to me, and there's nothing more boring than people telling me all about their company and where it came from. And like, don't get me wrong, it can be interesting, but when you're in a work setting and you're a busy person, I just want to know, right, why is this going to sell?
Yeah.
And how much is it? How much can I make out of it? And like, how does that line up against what I'm already doing?
Exactly. And I use an example, Scrumbles. Scrumbles, pretty decent sized brand now. Anisha and Jack are doing some wicked stuff there. But Ocado was their first grocery customer. And I remember Anisha and the buyer fighting over every penny that was available. And she was like, but I'm investing this, I'm doing that. If you did this, then that would happen. And, 50% of the time, 60% of the time, we were wrong and she was right. But that didn't help the negotiation that we were trying to make. So, Anisha, I apologize now, but, a lot of the time you were more right than we let you say you were. But at the end of the day, by trading off, she would step back on something and say, right, I'm coming back to this later. I'll let you have that one this time. And it builds trust, it builds relationships. And like you say, what you can't forget at any point is, however good our relationship might be, we've both got our best interests of our businesses first. And so it's, how do you find the point where you've built the trust to say, look, actually, I need this one right now. Yeah. Not, I'll come back and meet you again for when you need it, but right now I need that. And that's a really important part of playing with the corporates, because they're managing the P&Ls to within inches of their lives to hit that number that makes the shareholders happy or hits their boss's targets or something like that.
Yeah. And like, that's the thing, is that it is all a trade-off. And and that's why you've just, I think as a company, that a brand, you've got to make sure you've got enough in the background, and you don't give it all away too quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in terms of your own experience, like walking into talking with those corporate buyers, what's your general feeling been about that experience working with those people? You don't have to put names on people.
No, I'll be honest with you. The buyers, excellent, all of them. But I was well prepared.
Yeah.
I had everything nailed down before I spoke to them. I kind of knew what I was expecting.
So it was like a repartee, and you almost know that the challenge is coming, so you've got
so I was prepared for every question. And I'm an obsessive around pet industry anyway. So if I have a product to sell, I know why people are buying it. I know how to sell it. I know why you'd sell it. I know why people are paying a certain price for it, what the competition looks like, why it would sell within that environment. So I immediately was able just to rattle. And then when it flipped to price and distribution, I had everything already planned out, how I was going to get it to them, where it was coming from, how much I could sell it for, fully aware that like giving myself leeway, because they knocked me back a bit and then hit me with clawbacks, but I knew that and I was good with that. And just saying, but acting surprised, acting like, oh, okay.
Can I go and talk to the wall?
Yeah, I think I can just about do that. Because I really want, I really love your brand and I really want this to work and I want to be in with you. I had plenty of space. They could have pushed me a lot harder, but it's playing a game. They were happy with that price. I knew they were happy with that price. And so, yeah, it was just playing a game. And look, they were great for me, but I can imagine if I wasn't prepared going in, I'd have been so stressed out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of the other side to it. If you go in and you're like, you haven't got your USPs nailed down, you don't really because to be honest, there's people out there that don't really understand why people are buying their stuff or where their clear, unique selling point is. And also they've not set up their margins correctly to take that chunk out of it. And then it's like when they come in and tell them they want this for marketing and that for SEO, and they're just stressed out. They're like, just know what to do, but it's preparation, right? And look, I've been.
Well, it is preparation, but if you're fresh to that space, it's almost an acceptance that you're going to discover some stuff that you didn't know. And again, I would say if you're not comfortable, you say, look, time out. I'm not ready to have this conversation. What else do I need to know? You allow the people, and then, right, well, actually, let's call that, or let me explore that a bit more with you, and then walk away. You don't have to give your answer there and then. Just accept that when it does go back on email, it might take a few days to come back and answer.
Yeah, but again, I think that's why, like I say, I wanted to get it demystified, because I think there's nobody out there, there's no guidebook for this. There's no one out there telling you like this is how you need to deal with corporate buyers. It is very much people just I managed to get in front of the Pets at Home buyers, and they're like, they just want to see how exciting my product is, and I'll tell them how much it is, and they're going to buy it, and it's going to be great, And
we're all going to be happy, and we're all going to make millions of pounds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, whereas the reality is very different, So
yeah, I mean, look, I now, in terms of, again, if I'm putting a proposal together for a buyer, I sort of follow a process. So I would go, okay, what's the size of prize? Now, immediately, I feel dread when I'm on a new category and I'm a new supplier, because I don't know what the size of prize is. But the important thing is that you've got something to show the buyer that you're thinking about their business and what it might be. So what's the rate of sale? What do you think it'll be? If it's not right, the buyer will tell you, so you can immediately adjust. Oh. How much margin are you going to make? What cost are you selling it at? Is there VAT? Is there not VAT? Different products, different things. So all of those factors matter. And then it's kind of, right, so if there's 300 stores I'm looking for, the retailer might only give you 100. If you're talking to Pets at Home, for example, we'll trial it sort of thing. So it's having all of those on the table. And then, like you say, well, I might go in and say the size of prize to you is £100,000 as a retailer, but knowing it could be somewhere between 50 and 150, and we can explore that through the conversation. Then once you've put your size of prize, you tell your story. So it's ST, size of prize, tell your story. Then what's your recommendation? So I recommend this. Okay, you're building the story, you're creating the narrative. Then it's like, well, what's the killer insight? What's the bit of information that gives the buyer the confidence to go there, and that's quite hard sometimes, particularly if you've kind of stumbled across a good idea or something like that. If Kylie Jenner's doing it in the US and you haven't seen it in the UK, that's probably a killer insight that you bring into the party. Then it's qualify. So what would it take for me and you to get to an agreement? And then you end. What's the next steps? And again, used to really upset me. Right words. Used to really, how many people finish their presentation with thank you? That's a very polite English thing to do, but I'd much rather finish with a slide which says, what are the next steps? And then we sit there for the last 5 minutes of the meeting and we go, Clayton, you're going to do this for me. I'm going to do that. I'm going to come back to you on Friday. When are you going to come back to me? A week and a half's time. Okay, well, I'll give you till Friday the following week. you're my buyer. I'll look after you. You do the right thing for me. And then we'll come back. Let's have a meeting then 2 weeks on Monday. What time can you do? How many times have people walked away from that going, yeah, I'll be back in contact? Like in contact is cold. That's a warm lead at best, not. Yeah. So all of those actions. And so actually you're bookending the presentation. The rest will get lost by the buyer, because you think about you and me as interacting. If I'm a buyer and I've got 40 brands, bare minimum 40 times a year, I am going through this conversation around negotiations, around supplier decks, stuff like that. You're probably doing it 3 or 4 times. Yeah, if you're an independent business owner yourself, you're probably doing it many more times than that. But a regular national account manager, somebody else is. So I am way more trained to get value from this. But likewise, I don't have the bandwidth to. So if you're showing me manufacturing sites, if you're showing me a trade stand at, the Wick Festival in Northern Scotland or something like that, I'm probably going to lose that in the translation. But if you can tell me there's an opportunity for me to make more money at the front and there's a commitment from us to make this happen, then I'm probably going to step across the line and give it a go.
No. Yeah, well, that's the thing, is like, because you want the speed of conversion to be fast as well. Because the longer things goes on for, the more it just drifts as well. So I always like that whole, let's make an appointment in 2 weeks' time. Because I mean, when I met Chewy and Petco at Super Zoo, I was like, they were like, yeah, really like this, like the price, this all seems good. I'm like, wicked, let's book something in. Mm-hmm. Let's book something in, booked in appointments, got on Zoom calls. They got their the rest of their buying team on. They like handed me off to the next guy. Yeah. We done the negotiations, job done. Then it was like we were in the process of contracts and like uploading it on their systems and all the rest of it. But it has to go quick. Because if I'd have just left it and gone, that'd be great, we'll be in contact, 3-4 weeks go by, it's dead.
Yeah, and you're not the only priority, again, for the buyer. It's kind of, you just tweaked something in my mind there, which was like, that was one of the benefits of being Fetch, right? Admittedly, we were part of Ocado, but, if you wanted to launch a new product with a retailer of a certain size, there has to be a range window. You have to have got the product samples in. You have to have checked the barcodes. You have to have been set up as a supplier. If you wanted to be a supplier to Pets at Home brand new, there's probably a 6-month process there between the first conversation and the product ending up on shelf. At Fetch, like, we could set you up as a supplier. We could have the product put into our warehouse. I mean, I could have you live in 2.5 weeks. I mean, what a place to start. And probably not something that could have been achieved in pet wholesale either. So it's I
think like when like most of the corporates I've dealt with, it's like probably about 4 months by the time you sign contracts, upload on their systems, they check it there, and then eventually goes live. Then they, you send them your certificates of insurance and just all this like wacky stuff that goes on in between. It does. Because nobody's in a rush, but it's just a process. Whereas, and this is the problem for startup companies as well. When you haven't got a lot of customers, you need a lot of stock to deal with these people. But if you make the stock before you know it, it's got, especially with something with a best before date on it. Yeah. Before you know it, it's almost half going out of date before it even gets in there,
Yeah, and you've already signed up the documents, say you'll give 75% best before end, and there's 1,040 days on the product, and you've lost. You'd already got the product in, and you lost the days on it. Yeah,
because you think, oh well, this is a done deal. Like I've seen it happen. Next thing, it's all down TK Maxx being sold half price.
Yeah, well, again, experience of these were darker times pre me joining Tesco. But I've been working for a company, different space, but literally sat in a room with a buyer saying, I can buy this in, B&M. Why is it this price? I'm like, well, because you said you'd buy 100,000 of them and you bought 10. So I have to sell it somewhere. It goes out of date at some point. So it's a tricky old game. You've got to be super on it.
Yeah. No, definitely. And so like now you're talking about doing training courses, aren't you, in terms of like teaching people this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, I suppose, for me as a buyer and as a supplier, people are coming at it from different ways. And, I've probably been trained across 4 or 5 different programs where I get a complete understanding of all of the parts that people are bringing to the table there. So, for me and my business now, what I'm trying to do is effectively build a digital course where you create some capability around selling, negotiation, category management, and then effectively being able to take all of those pieces, but rather than it's like a £10,000 residential for 3 days, boot camp of negotiation, this would almost be you can break it down into the different parts. It's a modular system, and you can kind of pick the parts from a digital basis. So trying to work out at the moment if that's going to be a subscription service or just a course by course program. And then if we get some good initial interest, then building that into an actual in-person rather than just a digital sort of format.
Yeah, because obviously my opinion is that there's not enough of this stuff out there, because I do think that there's a lot of people out there who are running businesses and I think there's just a hole in the level of information they need to walk into these situations. And I always feel like there's a lot of people quite secretive about how they do things as well, because it's like, don't
lose the competitive advantage.
Yeah. Look, I'm crazy open, but I'm also a bit crazy. So it's like, so it's like, for me, it's like someone asked me something, I'm like, yeah, this is how I do it. This is how I structured this. Might not be the 100% best way to do it, but it's worked for me and I've done it for years. But it's probably better than maybe what they were going to do with no guidance at all, but I think like actually being able to speak to someone like you and actually learn what you're doing is a real benefit for people.
Yeah. And I think, look, again, you talk of people by people and most people believe that and experience that. Of course, when you're in a corporate environment, there are certain KPIs and objectives that I'm trying to achieve, and you again, might be trying to achieve for your business or your organization. But one of the things about people by people is how easy do you make my life? And you saying there, well, my route might not be the completest or the cleanest, but what your route might be is that you make my life easiest. Yeah. So, rather than every 6 weeks, I'm going, right, must ask Clayton for a performance update. You're coming to me every 6 weeks and saying, hey, here's the latest news. This is how much we've sold. This is what I've learned from our latest round of promotion, or, launch is 12 weeks in, can we do this? And it again, it's building that trust, building those moments. And if you can, again, as the seller to the buyer, almost have a couple of things just ready to go, it just builds out the confidence. And all I want to know as a buyer is I've got a product that's selling, I've got a supplier that's supplying, and I've got a relationship with the commercial person that they are thinking of me first. And again, it's got me thinking, but I sort of sit back in my own relationship as a supplier. Early days, I was probably thinking supplier first. How do we win? What do we take from this? Where actually, in most instances, if let's say you're in an account management role, your first priority, you should be the stakeholder for your customer in your organization. And I think a lot of people forget that.
It's funny because that's how I was as a wholesaler. It was all about the customer.
Yeah.
And I put that down to I used to work for a 5-star hotel when I was a teenager.
Yeah. So you've got it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I worked in the Sheraton Brussels Airport hotel, and we were like, it's all about the customer. If someone comes to the counter, they want a pack of cigarettes, you charge their room, you take the cash out, you put it into a vending machine, you go and buy them a packet. That's what 5-star means.
Yeah.
5 stars, not a nice bed. It's not a well-decorated room. It's about, they ask, you deliver. I don't care what it is. They want a beer from the bar and they don't want to go into the bar. You go in the bar, you get them a beer. That's what it's all about. And so I kind of took that ethos into distribution, where it was like the customer was always they make a mistake on their order and say they've ordered 100 items, but they've forgotten one thing and they're desperate for it. No worries, man. I'll get it to you.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not talking about next week. I'm talking about today, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because I care that your business succeeds. And if you need that product, I will supply you that product. Okay, it costs me money, but it doesn't really, because the business as a whole is making money, and it's making money because I'm gaining customers. Customers are spending more.
Yeah.
They're loyal to me, and they're loyal to me because I care about making sure that everything they get, it's like there'd be a peanut shortage. I'll be out there in a van picking up tons of peanuts from anyone who's selling them, because they need their peanuts to sell to their customers.
Yeah.
I don't care if in the short term I cause myself aggro, cost myself money, because over the course of the year I'm doing well.
Yeah, yeah, and they know then that you've got a better chance of maintaining that supply route than somebody else who might be, a couple of quid cheaper, right?
Yeah, because look, there's loads of people out there who are a couple of quid cheaper. But I had it before. I had a really big customer of mine, and they wound down their order. Like, they were spending, I don't know, £1,500 a week with me, something like that. And they wound down their order to a couple £100 a week. And that went on for about a month. And then it went straight back up again. And I didn't even ask them about it, to be honest. But that somebody's come into them, beat us on price on a lot of stuff. They've started buying off them. And then after a month, they're like, this is an absolute headache.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting a great service off these guys. And what am I saving? Like, a couple of quid here, a couple of quid there.
Yeah. On
a 1,500 quid, maybe if I'm saving £20, is it really worth it? All this extra aggro for 20 quid?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, it's, and I think, when suppliers need to think like that, they need to think about their customer first.
Yeah. And again, my experience of working across retailer and supplier is in a lot of instances, a supplier is so hell bent on growing distribution, growing that, they don't necessarily build the customer relationship. So, it's a good point to make. Is it better? A phrase I think the SAS used, not pet care, but slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So if you can build great relationships a little bit more slowly than just going for them gangbusters, you end up with much better, faster relationships in the future. We can negotiate. I know that you're coming to the table with the good answers, with the right level of understanding for my business. So, we won't do 10 rounds of negotiation because we can do it in 2 or 3 because we know where each of us are at.
But also it's trust as well. I mean, I like another thing I'd say to my customers as well. Sometimes they'd say to me, this particular product, does this sell? Like, does this sell well for you? And I'd be like, sells a bit, sells under these circumstances.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, what am I not selling that does sell? Well, this sells really well. Because at the end of the day, my primary thing is that if I'm selling them something, I want them to sell it. And because that's going to build my business. If they're just going to, if they say to me, does this sell well? It's like, oh, I've got loads of them on the shelf. Yeah, go on, have some, But where's that going? That's not going anywhere long term. But again, because you're prepared to say, no, don't, in this circumstances, don't buy this product. Like, I don't think you've got the right store for it. Look, you can if you want. I'm not stopping you. But if you're asking my opinion on whether you should buy this product, I'd say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that matters a lot to people, to be honest.
Well, and that can go into category management as well. So it's like, we used to do something at Tesco. They still do it, affluence ranging. So, I'd have a price sensitive store, a mid-market, an upmarket, a super upmarket store. When you're ranging, normally you do good, better, best. So, again, grocery environment, own label at the bottom, your major brands through the middle, and then your premium tier at the top. I'm not sure if you would make the same recommendations in bird food back in the day, but probably peanuts through the middle, right? Some feeders at the top, and your bulk items at the bottom.
Yeah.
But I take Tesco as an example. We in those stores, we switched finest sausages from the top tier into the middle tier in upmarket and super upmarket stores. This isn't pet related, but it's category management. Within 1 week, we had improved the sales of sausages, which was a multi-million pound category in Tesco, by 22%. because everybody in an upmarket store went, well, that's still a great product and it's great value, versus I'm buying the next bangers at £5-6 a pack, at £3 a pack. It was way better value and much better products. But how often, like you say, in terms of ranging, are people guided to doing that? How often do they find that special insight? And it's like, it might not be the product that makes the difference. It's who's your customer, what's their mission, what are they coming in to do? And suppliers can absolutely add that value to retailers, for sure.
No, definitely. So Ben, this has been amazing. Thanks for coming in, man.
Well, thank you for having me.
And if people want to get in contact with you, look out for your course. What's the best route?
Yeah, so course will be coming probably January time at the moment. My web designer's got a Christmas holiday to get through first. So expecting that all to come. We're just finishing up the design elements on it now. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, sort of post pretty regularly around category management, around retail, pet and other categories. My email address, if people do want to contact me, is ben@strike.co.uk. And just kind of pretty well known in the pet industry. So somebody probably knows me from somewhere. If not, contact Clayton. He knows me now. So do that. And then, look, just sort of really in terms of the work that I do and a lot of experience in the pet industry. I work across all of the categories in terms of specialists, have had previous vet experience and across grocery. And of course, e-commerce has been my thing for a long time. So, got a lot of points of view around e-commerce and how you can make or try and be successful in that space, conscious that price plays a big part in that. It's very difficult.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, awesome, Ben. Thanks a million for coming in, dude.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.